Hey guys, so yesterday I shared my worst and most disappointing books of 2020, and now I'm excited to do the flip side and share some of my favorite and most exciting or surprising books of 2020. It was really hard to think about picking like the order that these should be in. That's like picking favorite children. You know, it really depends on the day and the time. So what I decided to do is just share them in the order that I read them. That way, you know, they don't have to feel left out. So the first of my favorites that I read this year is The Golden Road by L.M. Montgomery. This is actually the book that comes after The Story Girl that follows Sarah Stanley while she goes out to Avonlea, right? I think so. And she goes to stay with her cousins for, I think it's probably 2 years. I think each book takes place over a year. And they just come across, you know, sweet little adventures. They make up stories for themselves. I bookmarked so many little pages that were fun. There was a little bit of a sadness. There was a little bit of, I guess, foreshadowing throughout, and it was good to balance some of those happy moments with you know, some things aren't going to work out perfectly. And I really fell in love with L.M. Montgomery's books this year, and she's going to have another book appear on this list a little later on. Next up was Terry Blackstock's If I Run. I read this book in, I think, 6 hours, one afternoon and evening. I may have set the kids down in front of the TV a little bit more that day and been quick with my supper preparations because I just got hooked. So we follow a girl, Casey, who stumbles across her best friend's body, and she knows she's going to be blamed for the murder. She also knows that who did it is, or that the authorities, I guess, are kind of dirty. And so she doesn't want to go to them and tell them what happened. So instead she runs away, and she's kind of on the run. It's a trilogy, and she's on the run over the course of the trilogy. She dyes her hair, she does all these things, and I love thinking about if you're trying to go into hiding, what would you do to change your appearance? How would you act? I really loved her as a character. There was moments throughout the trilogy where she would come across situations that a lot of people will just turn a blind eye, and she didn't, and I really admired her for that. And I loved the whole trilogy, but like always, the first book was definitely my favorite. And then we've got Keeper of the Lost Cities. I read book 1 and book 2, I think, back in January or February, and just loved them. I felt like there was a lot of similarities to Harry Potter, but I found them easier to read than Harry Potter, and for that, I think I kind of enjoyed the first 2 a little more. I plan on actually reading book 3 in January, so hopefully I continue loving the series, but I've heard really good things, and I hope so. So our main character lives in our world, and apparently she can hear people's thoughts. She's telepathic, and she always thought that was kind of weird. She finds out right in the beginning that she's actually not human. That's why she can hear thoughts. She is an elf, and she turns out to be a fairly powerful elf, and there's a lot going on that I don't even know yet. This ends up kind of going into a school setting, so it really does feel very Harry Potter-esque. But yeah, I really liked her as a character, and I thought the first 2 books were really great. Okay, this was my biggest surprise of the entire year. One of my goals for 2020 was to read a Sanderson book. I thought I would start off with one of his books that I would like the least. I wanted to kind of build myself up. That didn't happen because Skyward. This is a YA science fiction. There's aliens and things. I loved it, and I think I'm really realizing that I just love characters. Our character Spencer, known as Spin, she has so much personality. She's feisty. She's hurt, and so she has a very hard edge to her. She reminds me a lot of myself, especially in high school, and I really enjoyed so much about this. I love Sanderson's characters. He puts so much thought into them, and then he has zero problem killing them off. So you never know what's coming with his books, and I really love the series. I read book 1 and book 2, hoping he comes out with book 3 this year, and I plan on reading the first 2 books over again before that because it was just so good. I had so much fun reading this. Then I read a cute little book called Book Love. It's pretty much just page-long comics about bookish things, pretty much bookish problems, and it made me feel so known like other people out there feel this way too. I'm not the only one. I really loved it. Then I've got Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. Oh man, this was the first of her books that I read this year, and I loved all three. But I'm going to put this one down as my favorite. It's a World War II historical fiction where we follow a number of characters, and oh, I don't know, she does a good job with differentiating between characters, because I have troubles with that. When there's too many characters, I get confused, and I felt like I always knew who was who. And oh yeah, I don't know, I was tempted just to put all three of her books that I read this year, this one, and then Between Shades of Grey and Fountains of Silence, but I think I picked this one because it was my favorite. Then I have Cry of the Raven by Morgan L. Boosie. This was the last in the trilogy. I loved book 1, Mark of the Raven. Book 2, like always, not quite as good, but I really loved this one as well. So our main character is Celine, and she has the power to walk in people's dreams, so she can really affect things. She can affect their emotions and lots of things. And her family, historically, has used this power to assassinate people. And through the trilogy, she's trying to figure out how she can not do that and use it in a better way, and she really learns how to do that in this book, and I really enjoyed it. Then we've got another Sanderson book, and that is Mistborn, another one of his, I guess, series that I read this year. So this has 3 books in the trilogy. Book 1 was by far my favorite. Our main character, Vin, is also feisty. She's a lot like Spin, so I think that is why I quite liked book 1. She kind of changes throughout the series and is, I don't know, I guess maybe not so hardcore, but I loved it. This is a complex book with complex magic, because different metals, people have different powers with different metals, and different metals do different things. But Sanderson does a really good job with like making a complex world and making it accessible, and like I could kind of remember what was going on and like knew the things, and I feel like he has such a gift with his writing that way. Then I read the book Sweep, which is a middle grade book about a chimney sweep, but there's like magical elements because she has kind of like a coal friend, I guess, and it like literally made me tear up in places. I loved reading it so much. We actually listened to it together as a family, and I almost teared up then again, but I didn't. So it's like a little bit historical fiction because it shares some of the history about chimney sweeps. There's some fantasy elements, and I don't know, it's just such a sweet story. Then we have The Reckoning at Gossamer Pond. So this was my first Jamie Jo Wright I read this year. I don't actually have my copy because I'm borrowing it out. So The Reckoning at Gossamer Pond, we've got dual timeline. We got like 1906-ish, where there is tent revivals with these twin brothers who seem kind of sketchy. And then we've got like modern day and things linked together. And I don't even want to say too much because I really enjoy the process. There's always some murder involved and things go down, and I feel like she does a really good job in this book of, you know, having all these loose threads and bringing them together. She kind of reminds me, her writing reminds me of Kate Morton a little bit, but what Kate Morton does in like 500 pages, she can do in like 350, which I think is a really good number. And then I've got another Jamie Jo Wright right after because I loved that book. I gave Reckoning at Gossamer Pond 5 stars, and then I read this one, The Curse of Misty Wayfair, and loved it even more, so I guess this has to be 5+ stars. This one are, once again, dual timeline, and our 1907-ish timeline. Our main character, what's her name? Thea. She is a post-mortem photographer, so she goes into people's homes after their loved ones have died and takes pictures of their loved ones. In my reading blog, when I read this, I shared some photo examples of this because this was a real thing that really happened. And it's just got this eerie element of like ghosts and stuff, but they're not real ghosts, like it's explainable. And then our current timeline character, she's messed up, but I really like her. I feel like she's got a good heart, and yeah, I felt like this book was like pretty much perfection. There is a bit of, I guess, Christian fiction, so there's like always a romantic element, and I always struggle with that a little bit, but I liked the other elements so much that I could ignore a little bit of the cheesy like stereotype there, I guess. Next on the list is my other L.M. Montgomery book, and that is Anne of Avonlea. I enjoyed Anne of Green Gables, but I really fell in love with Anne in this book. She isn't quite so intense maybe in this book, not so impulsive, and I loved her stories and adventures. I was reading it so fast I didn't even go through and like highlight anything, but I want to reread this one. I enjoyed Anne Shirley, and Avonlea has such stereotypical characters in such a positive way. Like, this just reminded me so much of my hometown and the neighbors that would spy on each other. Like, I know people that are Rachel Lynns, and I just love those elements of it. She did such a great job with this book. Then I have like a middle grade, I would say upper middle grade, maybe. Yeah, upper middle grade, because my daughter listened to this entire series after, and that is The False Prince. I think there's 4 books in the series. She has loved every single one of them. I stopped at the first one because I feel like I really liked where it stopped. So the idea of the book is that we have this guy who he buys 4 orphans, and he tells them that he wants to train them to impersonate the prince. Although the key is the prince actually disappeared a number of years ago, and so he wants them to like learn to be like the prince and then be like, oh, actually I'm the prince and I'm alive. And he wants to kind of, have this puppet in the royal family. And oh man, I had such a good ride with this book. Our main character, his name is Sage. He like would not be a friend of mine in real life. I don't think. He's pretty impulsive, and he gets himself into scrapes a lot, and he's really annoying and cocky. But it was very fun to read about. I enjoyed it, and I really like how the book ended. And I don't know, my daughter says such good things about the other ones that I don't know if I should continue on or if I should just like leave it there. If you've read that series, let me know what you think I should do there. This one was a reread for me, and this is Frank Peretti's The Oath. I did say when I read this book, I'm not 100% sure if I loved it so much because of the nostalgia. I read this in high school, loved it then. I also made sure to read it when it was like October and dark outside and creepy, and like I really wanted to set the scene with this book. So it's a small town that a guy dies. They think it's a grizzly bear, or they say it's a grizzly bear, but the town knows that there's something more going on, and there's a lot of like spiritual warfare going on. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed this book the second time over, I think just as much as the first. And I can't wait to reread the rest of Frank Peretti's stuff, especially Piercing the Darkness and This Present Darkness. Okay, and then all of a sudden I kind of like realized I like thrillers this year, so I really enjoyed No Exit. There is a decent amount of swearing in it, and a few scenes or a number of pages that are kind of gruesome, but I really enjoyed the twists in that book. So it starts out on Christmas Eve. It all takes place over one night, actually. So this university student is going home for Christmas, but there's a blizzard and she has to pull off at a rest stop. And she goes in, meets the people, and then realizes she needs her phone charger, I think. She goes back to her vehicle, and she realizes that in the van next to her, there is a cage with a girl in it. And the whole book is her trying to figure out, like, what should she do? Like, morally, should she help this girl? And then who should she confide in? Like, whose van is this? And there are so many twists going on in that book. Things I didn't see coming. I enjoyed the entire reading process. The more gruesome parts I may have skimmed a little, but I quite like how it ended and enjoyed the process. Then I've got Safely Home. This is a fiction story about persecution in China, and we follow like 2 characters, one that is from the US and one that's from China. The one in China, he's going to underground church, and he's really living life, I don't know, like on the edge, like death could happen. His actual question he asks himself every day is this the day I die? So his father taught him that, and his family has pretty much all died like being persecuted. They're all martyrs. And on the flip side, our American character is this guy's friend from university. He is in like the corporate world. He's making lots of money, kind of forgot about God, and they end up coming together, and lots of stuff goes down. And this book made me really think about how I live my life in such a good way. Like, am I actually living for God, or am I living for myself? And I really enjoyed this book. Obviously, it's on the list. The next one is The Line Between. Honestly, I'm being lazy. I'm gonna borrow it to my brother, and it's downstairs right now, and I'm not grabbing it. So this is, it's about a girl that is kicked out of a cult, And I keep talking about how much I enjoy cults lately. What I mean is reading about cults. So she's kicked out of a cult, and at the same time, like, there's this worldwide pandemic going on that sounds exactly like 2020, except this book was written in 2019. And yeah, it felt like the perfect time to be reading a pandemic book. Actually, I've read quite a few in 2020. But also the whole cult aspect just had me so intrigued and made me think about how much, like, lies often come, like, from the truth, right? Like, just take the truth and twist it a bit. And now I just kind of want to read all the cultish books in 2021. That's like a non-official goal of mine. The next awesome book that I read this year is Behind Closed Doors. This is a thriller, and Jack and, what's her name again? Grace, are like the perfect couple. She is like skinny and like cooks the most amazing meals and does all the things, and he is rich and funny and charismatic and all that. But there's like a few red flags. It says it really well in here. Others might wonder why Grace never answers the phone, or why she can never meet for coffee even though she doesn't work, how she can cook such elaborate meals but remain so slim, or why she never seems to take anything with her when she leaves the house, not even a pen, or why there are such high security metal shutters on all the downstairs windows. Some may wonder what's really going on once the dinner parties are over and the front door has closed. Yeah, I don't want to say any more than that because it's a thriller. There's lots of twists. It's really well done. I enjoyed it a lot. And surprisingly to me, this is a thriller with, I don't think any swearing, not very much anyway. I just feel like it's really rare to find a thriller without any swearing. And this one is one of them. If you like thrillers and you haven't read this one yet, you probably have. But if you haven't, I would recommend it. Okay, and the last of my favorite books from the year. I am excited to finally have another favorite Agatha Christie, you guys. I like her writing, but this year I had one book that I hated that made it to my like most disappointing books of 2020, and all the other ones have just kind of been like 3 stars. But A Murder is Announced is one of my favorites. So this village, one morning everyone gets their little papers. This is back in what? I don't know. She wrote in like the 50s. They get their newspapers, and there is a murder announced in the newspaper. It says, "A murder is announced and will take place on Friday, October 29th at the Little Paddocks at 6:30 p.m. And someone dies. And Agatha Christie does such a good job of leaving like a bread trail. And I can never figure it out. And I love it when I'm just like, what? And I really enjoyed this one. There are some things I should have picked up, but I definitely didn't. So I really enjoyed that. Okay, so those are my favorite books of 2020, including some that were surprising that I didn't think that I was going to love as much as I did. I would love to hear what books you really enjoyed this year, and if any of them are the same as the ones I enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.